Hello, this is Smith and Grezzy. We've got a real treat for you tonight. We've got the one and only Kevin Crockford with us. Kevin's been a member of the same band as me and Sandy, so we share a few tales together. But Kevin, it's our real pleasure to have you on Smith and Grezzy, and thank you for joining us from very, very sunny and hot Greece.
Thank you for asking me, guys. It's great to see you both and to hear your dulcet tones again. It's a shame you haven't got your instruments. I'd like to hear them again, or would I?
No, you wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't. No. Okay. Yeah, you're right. Thanks for the invite, guys. Yeah, I am in Greece for a couple of months. This is what I do in my life now, and I book all my Greek trips around the Desford Band Diary, which means we can come away for quite a few months, because obviously that's how they operate, which may not go down too well with some, but there it is what it is. It suits me and everybody else at Desford fine.
So Kevin, how did your banding journey actually start? You're from Portsmouth, aren't you?
I am from Pompey. You're absolutely right. And I think I was 9 or 10, and I've related this story before. But our teacher at the junior school, he was a cornet player. And he was really keen to have a school band going with all these 10-year-old kids. And so much so that some of my mates joined the band, and he used to let them off maths lessons to go and practice. So I really fancied a bit of that. I thought I'll have a slice of that. So I went to see him. I said, Mr. Young, can I learn the cornet? And he said, show me your teeth. So I did. He says, no, you'll never play a cornet with teeth like that, lad. Go and sit down. So I was really cheesed off at this. So I went home that night, and I spoke to my dad about it. And he says, I work next to a bloke in the post office in Pompey, who's something to do with a band. I'll have a chat with him. So he did. And he came home the next day. He said, I had a chat with Wes, a guy called Wes Garner.
I remember that name.
I thought you'd remember it, with the then South Sea Junior Band, later to become Solent Youth Concert Band. Yeah. So my dad had a chat with Wes, and Wes says, fetch him down. He said, we got a bit of a beginner's class. We got some old cornets. Great. So down we went, and that's how it started. It's as simple as with the South Sea Junior Band. And from there, it was only a small band, it was... And of course, we all learned about the camaraderie and making good music, and loads of new friends. It was just great, and we all loved it. And then Wes said to me, he said, look, we've never had a soprano cornet player in the band. Right. So I said, well, what's one of them? I had no idea what it was. And I was only 10. And he said, well, you seem to be the best at the high notes, and you seem daft enough. So I've got this instrument here for you. This is what it's about. And that was that.
They do say soprano players need to be a bit mad, Kev.
Well, they do. I think I'm the only sane one, to be honest with you.
I'll tell you a story. When I started at Whitburn Junior Band, there was an old bloke there used to come along, and he says, lad, you'll always find there's a madman in a brass band. He says, and it's always either the soprano cornet, the bass trombone, or the percussionist.
It's a fair
point.
I'll
tell you what, every band I've been in.
I spoke to Frosty about this a long time ago. Mark Frost, I spoke to him, and he said the reason for that, Kev, he's right, by the way. He said the reason for that is because the sop and the bass trombone are the only two instruments in the band that can add an additional colour to the sound.
Yeah.
Quite correct.
Absolutely, and that was Frosty said that. So maybe that's why we are a little bit crackers, and you've got to be brave, haven't you? You've got to be brave. Simple as that.
So you joined Solent Concert with. He was very successful, wasn't he, Wes Garner?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I remember I was 13, and I auditioned for the National Youth Band and got in, and there was 13 of our band was in there at the same time. All kids.
Wow.
Yeah, 13 of us there was. Yeah.
That's incredible.
It really was. It was brilliant. Yeah.
So how did you find the National Youth Band?
Well, mainly through being at the Solent Band, and half the kids were already in it, and they said to me, apply for it and come and join us if you can get in. So I did. Clearly there was a shortage of sop players then, as always has been ever since. So it was actually quite easy to get in, I think. But there you go.
Who was conducting then, the youth band?
My first course was in 1974, and it was Bernard Keefe. Remember the guy that adjudicated the BBC Best of Brass?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And my next course was conducted by a lovely old gentleman called Eric Ball.
Oh, crikey.
Yeah, special
You
times.
lucky man. You lucky
Yeah,
man.
absolutely. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I remember so much about that course more than all the others, because he stood in front of us all. There's a little frail chap, and he said, "Boys and girls," he says, "I'm not one of these conductors that will flail my arms everywhere. All you're going to get is just simple little beats." He said, "Because that's all you really need."
Very true.
And absolutely spot on. Big lessons even at that age.
Yeah.
Wonderful times.
So, who were the other soprano players in the youth band around that time?
Oh, Wycherley.
Was Witch there?
Yeah, Witch was there. He was, because he's 5 years older than me, so he was coming towards the end of his youth band career. There was Wycherley and David Pearce. Remember, who married Della? The late David Pearce.
Yes.
Bless his heart. He was on SOC before he went into the RAF.
Right. All right. So, I bet it were a bit of a lively section with Alan.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and it was great. It was great. I mean, my feet didn't even touch the floor. Sat on the chair. I was so tiny. I know times have changed, of course.
What do you mean? They actually reached the floor now?
They just reached the floor. Yeah.
So did the youth band give you some sort of insight into another level of playing?
Oh, absolutely. Mainly through repertoire. I think, more than anything. I don't know about what it's like nowadays. Well, I have an idea, but it was all wonderful music we used to play, and so much of it, and we all had to work very, very hard. But it was just great. Yeah, we had split lips and everything else for the hours of practicing every day, but it didn't matter. It was all these conductors. It was just great, fantastic.
Yeah. It was a great learning curve for me when I went to the National Youth Band, realising, these players were just on another level, and I went in and I thought, wow. And between the Easter and summer course, I worked my backside off. Yeah. And because it just put some fire in my belly and made me really work and realise that I want that good. But it works like that, and I think that it's worth its weight in gold for that.
I think you're right. The competition is strong because you want to get up the line to get on that principal seat, even at that age, and so you put the effort in too, right?
Yeah. So when you left school, Kev, where did your life take you then?
Oh, crikey, doing a few different jobs of work on the building sites. it might sound wrong, but I didn't really have that much interest in a career. I just wanted to move north and play with one of the great big bands. That was always my dream.
So you'd already decided that that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, but don't forget, back in them days, you joined a big band and you got a job with being in the band. It was still all the works bands, Yeah. So I just applied and auditioned for any bands that used to advertise in the British bands when this was like 1978, 79.
Yeah.
And used to go up and audition. And City of Coventry was the first band that accepted me. Right. And they had a very good band then, to be fair, in 79. But I was only there for 6 months. And then that's when Dick Evans and Leyland came knocking. Dick had just started with Leyland, then just started building it up to where he got it, which was incredibly special.
So were you one of those early recruits at that time?
About a year after he took over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I ever come across your playing, Kev, was the British Open. I can't remember what year it was, but Coventry actually won.
81.
Test variations on the 9th.
That's right. Yeah, I played with Leyland. Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, it is. We came second.
And I listened to you there, and I was like, "Wow, who's this? Who's this? I've never seen him before." And little did we know we spent a lot of our banding careers together.
We did. It's a funny world. Do you know that my first Open was 79 with Coventry, and as many of the kids of that day, I had hair halfway down my back, and it was thick curls. And we had a lady in the band called Nicola. In fact, we had 2 ladies in the band. And my mother and father were at the King's Hall, Bellevue. And if you remember, guys, you used to walk through the audience to get to the stage. Yeah. And I'm walking past, and my poor mother heard somebody from behind say, "Oh, look, they've got 3 girls in the band." So I had to have a haircut pretty quick after that. Yeah.
So you went up to Leyland Vehicles with the wonderful Richard Evans, and
That's right.
Did you work at the factory there?
I did. Yeah, did all sorts of things there. We all did. We all worked. The whole band had a job there. It was just brilliant. We used to go and do tours, and it was just part of your job. It was great. Great days.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were the best.
The days of works banding. Long missed.
Absolutely. I mean, Maggie destroyed that. And on reflection, she was right too, because it was insane, really. You know, how we all got away with so much. It was just great days, but it was never going to last forever.
No.
I remember, Ken Hurst from Grindthorpe once rung my dad, and he said, "We'd like your son to come and join Grindthorpe." And so he'll be okay. We'll give him a job. And so he says, "Well, what will he be doing?" "Oh, well, he just has to clock in and go to a rehearsal." And he says, "Nah, my lad's going to learn a trade."
Yeah, he did you a favour.
He wouldn't let me do it.
Yeah,
he did.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah, he did.
But so now this is where I get a bit mixed up about your playing, Kev. Did you go to Carlton Main after Leyland?
Yes.
Right.
I did for a year in 1982. Yes, 82 to 83. I was at Carlton Main. And then from there I went to Black Dyke,
Yeah.
In 83.
Right, so how did the Black Dyke thing come about?
Oh, that came about through a phone call from dear old Freddie Ellis.
Oh.
And God bless his heart. Yeah, what a wonderful guy he was. It was a phone call. I'm Fred from Black Dyke. We need a soprano player. Would you be interested in auditioning? I said, yeah, damn right. Because that was always my dream, to play in that band. Of course it was.
Yeah.
All of it was all our dreams, wasn't it? I know it was Sandy's.
Yeah.
Of course it was. And and you were there, Sandy, that first night I went.
I was, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I remember you coming in.
They were proper auditions though at the time. They weren't just like now. It's a case of, even I think with the top bands, you go and you play a couple of concerts and stuff, and they sort of suss you out, but you're not actually put under any pressure. I bet you had to play a solo. I did.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I almost feel like I broke the mould there. I was all prepared to play, so it wouldn't have bothered me in the slightest.
Yeah.
But it was weird because Trevor Walmsley took that rehearsal.
Yeah.
And basically, I just got booked to do 2 concerts, which I did, and the band offered me the job at the end of them 2 concerts.
Right.
It really was that simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe Jacko introduced himself to you early on.
Yeah, oh God, yeah. Well, that story. I'm happy to relate it again. Yeah, I got to the band room it was December 1983. I got to the band. There was about 2 foot of snow on the floor up at Queensbury, which is quite normal.
Yeah.
And I walked up there, and I'm like, my goodness, I was very apprehensive, let's say, full of myself, of course. I was 21, 22, something like that. And I walked through the curtains, and there's just one bloke in there, and there was this guy with a double B. I knew who it was, and he had his glasses on the end of his nose, some chains round the back of his glasses, rims round his neck, and he's just pumping away with notes. And he stopped when I walked in. He looked over his eyes. He went, "Are you this soprano leg?" Yeah? I says, "Yeah, I am, Mr. Jackson." He says, "I hate soprano players," or words to that effect. I said, "Oh, okay." There's not much I could say to that. So I went and sat down. He carried on tootling. And then Sandy walked in with Dougie Blackledge.
Yeah.
And you won't remember this, but you, Sandy, you just polished your instrument. And you were there polishing it, buffing it all up, and Dougie came in and purposely put his fingerprints all over it, and you went absolutely mad at him. I'm sat there thinking, this is just so bizarre. And then McCann walked in, sat in front of me, and then Cloughy walked in across the way. Frank Berry walked in. Yeah. Oh, it was just ridiculous.
It was incredible band around that period, wasn't it?
Awesome.
When you mentioned about Dougie Blackledge, Dougie and I were students together at the time.
I know.
We were travelling up to band, and Dougie said that when he went for his audition, there was an old lad there. I don't know if he was still about when you were there, Kevin. Herman Ambler.
No,
he used to come. Yeah. He used to. Right. I think he was getting on a bit. He used to come and listen. And Dougie says when he went up for his audition, I auditioned back end of 81. Dougie had auditioned in 1980. Mm-hmm. And he says he got to the band room and he says, again, there was only one guy in the band room, Herman Ambler, sweeping up or tidying the library.
Okay.
And he says, are you the cornet player? He says, yeah. Dougie was just a young lad like us. And Herman says to him, he says, I've seen many a cornet player come up here and die. on an edition. I thought, yeah, brilliant. That's what they were like, though.
It was tough.
Well,
at the end of that
was always
rehearsal,
designed, that audition, to see how you're going to react under extreme pressure.
Exactly. And that's what they said. If you can do that, you'll be all right on the Albert Hall stage.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. But I remember at the end of that rehearsal, and it had gone all right, thank God. And Jacko came over to me, and he just leaned over and he says, "Well, you can play a bit. You might be okay." And as you know, Simon, Jacko and I became, like you, just the
Wonderful
greatest of friends. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think we were the last of his friends to see him before he passed away, Kev.
We were. He only let me and you in the hospital, didn't he?
Yeah.
I remember. Yeah.
It was a week before London, if I remember right.
Yeah, I went on my birthday. You're right, 2nd October. That. Yeah.
So, wonderful character. So,
Brilliant.
obviously, you joined the institution that is Black Dyke Mills Band.
I did.
And it was run in them days very much like it had always been run, very successfully.
Yeah.
And the pro would have been Major Parks.
It was. It was Major Parks, and it was Trevor Walmsley at the time, but then Derek Broadbent came in fairly soon after that as the resident, and it was just a marriage in heaven, to be honest with you, because everything was just perfect. The best. People still say now, which is your favourite band, Kevin? I always say mid 80s Dyke, all day long.
Well, which brings us, me and Sandy had a talk about when we get players like yourself on, we're going to award each player a Jeffrey Whittam performance.
Okay.
And yours has got to be, for me, Cloudcatcher Fells. 1985, I think it was, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a performance. I played that day with Desford and I thought we'd done well. In fact, we ended up second. But I was sat with Howard Snell listening to you, and as soon as you'd gone through that bit, he says, "Can't cope with that." He says, "That's just something else," and it was stunning.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, that's really nice of you to say that. And accolades don't come bigger than Howard Snell, do they? Fantastic.
No.
But I remember it so well. It was just the most wonderful performance all round, and it was just fantastic. Yeah, and people still say to me, "Which is your favourite performance?" And it's that one. Yeah.
Is it?
Is it?
Right.
Yeah. Even though it's nearly 40 years ago, it's still that one. Yeah. Nothing's topped it for me.
You had a dodgy opening to get over at the beginning there, Sandy. When the horns, am I right in thinking they're all in unison?
That's right.
It just starts 3 horns in unison.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Just middle register stuff, But I think we did all right.
You did superb. You did superb. It sounded like one player, just as it should be.
It did. I've still got the live recording, and it does. It just worked. But you were on about everybody's sound matched, and you can hear it on the recordings. The actual quality of sound the band made was amazing. It's funny you say about performances that stand out. One of the questions I was going to ask you was, because this has only happened to me once or twice, was, have you ever been involved in a performance, a contest, big one, Opens, Nationals, whatever, where you thought while you were still playing on stage, we're going to win this? Because it only happened to me twice. Once was Devil in the Deep Blue Sea, Fairies, and the other one was Salute to Youth, which was the month before Cloudcatcher.
It was
at the Free Trade Hall. That was amazing.
I remember listening to Salute to Youth in the hall. It was just tremendous, and when you heard the recording back, you could hear all the detail. My word,
there, wasn't it? I know, especially in that last movement, because it really did fly, didn't it?
It absolutely flew. We got a letter. Peter Wilson, the old British bandsman, editor,
he was one of the judges.
He was one of the judges, and he wrote a letter to the band the week after, because he made a sort of bit of a complaint in the remarks, saying he couldn't hear some of the detail in the last movement. And then when he heard the recording, he wrote and says, I'm sorry, can you please accept my apologies? He had absolutely everything on it, which was nice. But God, the clarity on that was just amazing. But again, that was the major, just you can see the arms wafting about at the front, and the band just was on fire.
In the romance to that piece, I'll never forget that. I mean, it was a month, you say, before Cloudcatcher, but it was like an organ, in the slow thing, whatever. And and then you get to Cloudcatcher, and it was another form of organ. It was proper, all the stops pulled and everything. What a noise! It was unbelievable.
One thing I still have for that. We remember we used to rehearse across the road in the Victoria Hall.
Yeah,
and that was because the band room was so small you couldn't get anybody in, and that was so they used to go across there for one night, about the Tuesday or Wednesday, Thursday before the contest, to let people come in. And I, for some strange reason, I took a sort of ghetto blaster type thing up, and I set it up, and I recorded it, and you can hear the rehearsal. And Parks is and it's a proper rehearsal. It's not like one of these sort of showcase rehearsals these days where bands still do them, but they run through the test piece and that's it. They don't rehearse. They don't really let anybody in. Parks, he just rehearsed the band. He was telling people off. People were questioning what was going on. What's happening at letter D and all this, and I can't hear this. And he was telling, bollocking people and stuff. It was just like a proper 2-hour rehearsal in a bigger hall.
Yeah, that's how it should be.
Yeah. And but he never bothered him, and we just sat and rehearsed. It wasn't I get the feeling sometimes these days I know the benefits of doing it, but it's a slightly lost night. For as far as rehearsals concerned,
nowadays it's become more of a show, isn't it? It's a show time. It's a shame because you're right; it's a waste of the night.
We only started it because you couldn't get people in. I mean, how many could get in the band room? Half a dozen. That was about it.
If you were lucky, yeah.
If you were lucky, and then by that time, when the percussion was getting more and more, you could hardly get anybody in the band room.
No, that's right.
But was. I've still got a cassette of all that stuff.
Good God!
So,
wow.
Anyway, one question we were dying to ask you, right? And this is, I don't think there is a more decorated brass player in bands these days than you. How many Opens, Nationals, and Europeans have you won?
Okay, I'm sure you're probably wrong, but Nationals there's 8.
Right. Okay.
6 Opens. And I think it's 5 Europeans. Yeah, 5, because I did one with Corey recently, yeah.
Right, okay.
Wow.
That's a lot of Nationals, isn't it? 8 to win 8
times. It is, yeah.
You've blasted me right out of the water with that.
Well, we all have a bit of luck our way, don't we, along the way sometimes. But yeah.
But no, that's an incredible total, Kevin.
Yeah, really I'm very proud of it. Of course I am.
Yeah. So, eventually, after Black Dyke, you did a short stint at Grimethorpe, didn't you?
I did. Well, I went to Desford first for 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
I did 7 years with Dyke in the 80s. Then, if you remember, Sandy, I had a massive front tooth problem.
Yeah.
I'm sure you were still there.
Yeah.
I remember this.
Yeah, and it was a really, really bad time. I was at the dentist twice a week for about 20 weeks to shave a bit off because they lost the models when they redid a crown. They lost the original.
That's right. I remember that bit.
It was an absolute nightmare. And the Major was as patient as he could be, to be fair, because I wasn't playing well. Everyone knew it. I knew it, and I was working hard to try and get it fixed. But it was a bit finger in the air, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And just as it was starting to come good, the Major had run out of patience. It was fair enough, and off I went. And I went straight down to Desford. And it was ironic because I went there in the April of '89, and we went to London on Odin. And I don't need to say.
You know what's coming.
You know what's coming. Yeah. Sadly for Black Dyke and was it the Major on that one or was it Wombat?
It was David King.
It was Wombat, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was it
on Odin?
Yeah.
I'm not sure it was.
Well, I'll refresh your memory.
You came second, didn't you? To my little band from the Midlands. Yeah.
It was David King by then.
Right.
I think the Major ended up leaving shortly after you left.
He did. You're absolutely right. Very, very soon after.
Yes.
Yeah, it was.
It was Kingy because what I'm thinking about is when Odin was commissioned,
Yeah.
On the back of the band winning everything in '85, Arthur Butterworth wrote that piece a year later or something. And Parksy, we did it on a bandstand or something, and that's what I'm remembering.
No, we did it. We did it, Sandy. We did it at the International Trumpet Guild in London.
Yeah, we did in the August
'87. Yeah.
And John Gillan played with the band, and we had to get 2 uniforms cut up the back. Remember? Because they didn't have one big enough. Sorry, John, if you're listening. So with those 2 little things on the back of the uniform, we cut one of the uniforms close to the one on the left, and then the other one close to the one on the right, and left a big batch of material in the middle because they couldn't get a uniform big enough for John. But I remember that. But yeah, you're right. We did it in August, didn't we, down there?
Yes,
so Black Dyke was second at that London, and you were first.
Yeah, that's right.
I bet that felt quite sweet, didn't it?
It was brilliant, actually, because I got bang on form again and got my teeth sorted. It was too late for Black Dyke, but my heart was still in it there. Desford, I was working up in North Leeds then. And travelling to Desford all those times, it was just too much. Grimey came on in that Christmas time. So Pete's calling it a day. Would you like to come? So I said, yeah, of course. It's 20 minutes from my house. Why wouldn't I? And so that's what I did. Yeah.
When you went to Grimey, Kevin, was that still when the colliery was going? Yeah.
It was because I went there and they were all working at the pit, and Ken called me into the office, Ken Hurst, the secretary, and he said, right, he says, can you come down to the pit on Monday morning? He says, and we'll get you sorted out to get you a job down pit. I said, whoa, hang on a sec. I don't want to work down the bloody colliery. I'm not built for that. And I had a good career going with the company I was working with. I said, well, we'll have to make it work. He said, okay, it's not a problem. And then Nesbitt joined at the same time, Dave Nesbitt. Right, yeah. And he didn't get a job. So it was just him and I. We weren't working, the only 2 that didn't work at the colliery. Yeah. But it was a great band, actually, in 1991. Grimey was fantastic. Yeah.
Did you have much success in that period?
Yeah, we won the Open on Paganini in 91.
Of course you did.
The area on Journey to Freedom that year, it was a great band. It really was. With Lieutenant Colonel, Mr. Renton. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh. Yes. It's were there some standout characters at Grimey at that time other than yourself?
Oh, God. Oh, mate, it was full of them. Well, I just mentioned Frank Renton there, and I love Frank, but his nickname from the players was the Screaming Skull. That's what they used to call it. And it was pretty apt, actually, but they all loved him, really. But, yeah, there were some great characters there. Yeah, it really was. There are stories I could relate, but maybe I better not.
It's funny, you're not the only person who's ever said that.
No, I'm sure.
No.
So you had a spell at Grimey. Then, am I right in thinking you went back to Black Dyke?
I did. Right. I did 3 years with Grimey, and then in January '92. Jim Watson took over at Black Dyke. You'll remember, Sandy, you were just still there.
Yeah,
and of course, I had a good time with Jim at Desford in '89. And basically, he got in touch with me and asked me if I'd go up there. And I jumped at it. 1, because my heart was still in Black Dyke, of course it was. And 2, because Grimey, because they all worked at the pit, they used to vote to do Sunday night concerts because it meant they didn't have to go to work on the Monday. And this particular Sunday, they were in Southend-on-Sea on an evening, on Sunday night. So I had to drive the car, and I thought, this is just ridiculous. They were a bit selfish in that respect, I understand why they would do it, but hang on a minute, everyone works at the pit now. And it was at that time that all happened. But what I do remember, the next day, I went for the day of my first rehearsal back at Dyke. That afternoon, I went to see Ken Hurst in Grindthorpe at his house, and I took in the laundered uniforms, shirts, everything. I'd done everything, cleaned it all, pressed it, everything, instrument, you name it, the job lot. And gave my notice in there and then. It had to be done that way. And he was a bit upset and a bit angry, and I don't really know why he was angry, but he was. Anyway, so I went to Dyke that night, and it was a bit of a carnage, to be honest with you. Most of the guys had gone. You were one of them, Sandy. You know,
I was another.
I was the sort of last. When I left Dyke, I was the longest serving player, only by a matter of weeks.
Right.
A lot of players left, and it was.
I know.
It was a real sort of. It was a real strange time because we never really saw it coming to that.
Well, I mean, he fired 2 players, didn't he? Morgan and Nigel Fielding.
Yeah.
To bring in Bob and dare I say me as well. That's what got like most people's back, I think.
Yeah.
Which I kind of get. You know, why would you get rid of Morgan Griffiths, Christ, or Nigel Fielding at that time? But then there it was. But you know, I went to Dyke that night, that rehearsal. I got home, a couple of pints in the Stag, and I went home, and it was about 11:30 in that evening, and the phone went, and it was Gary Cutt, and Gary says, "Are you okay?" I says, "Yeah, I'm fine. Are you?" He says, "Yeah, I'm just a bit worried about you." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, you weren't at band."
Oh, Grimey.
Yeah. I said, no. I said, "Was Ken not there?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "But I gave him my notice this afternoon." Ken hadn't told the band.
Oh,
so,
right.
So I said, "I'm sorry, Gary. I've got a bit of news for you."
Dear.
Oh dear.
I know, but that was Ken. Yeah, he never told him.
What was Jim like to work with? I did a couple of short stints with Jim and really enjoyed him.
Yeah.
He's a great musician.
He's a brilliant musician. He was a great motivator, in very similar to Parks in many ways. You know, his man management, his understanding of characters, as well as the players, he was absolutely superb. And he was great fun as well. We had 7 fantastic years there until it all went astray at the end. You know, but yeah, the times were fantastic. Absolutely, with Jim, as it was with the Major.
It was quite successful as well, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah. It was bizarre, you know. I'm not going to say too much, but, you know, we went there in 92 and for 3 years, none of us even got not a penny in even expenses. There was no fees, no retainers, nothing. Absolutely. And we had probably had one of the most successful spells of Black Dyke history because we were all there for the right reasons. Yeah. Does that make sense? You know,
well,
and then in 95...
Kev, back in our days, the retainers weren't that big anyway.
No, they weren't. But the expenses for some, like Chris Jeans travelling up from wherever he lived, it was a bit of an issue. But nobody got a penny, apart from Jim, of course. But so we were there for the right reasons, and it was such a successful time. And then Bradford and Bingley came along and pumped in their hundreds of thousands of pounds, and it all went to the bottom of the sea after that. We never won a thing after that.
There was, I think, there's probably. You could say that at this time, Jim's legacy at Dykes almost brushed under the carpet a little bit. Like, a lot of people don't know about it, but he did a hell of a lot of good recordings. All that Walton stuff that he did, Ted Watson, all that sort of stuff, and he had a load of commissions done.
He did,
and all of that stuff. It's sort of slightly forgotten. It seems to me, anyway. That,
it certainly has changed.
It needs to be reevaluated a bit because, he did. He took it by the scruff of the neck and made it.
It was another golden period, really, wasn't it? Let's be honest.
It was.
He did really well.
Really was. Yeah. I don't know about these days. I don't have anything to do up there anymore. Went back and did a weekend. Thoroughly enjoyed myself, but that was enough. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, because it was so different to what I remembered and what I loved. About that whole institution, it's changed so much. Not saying it's for the bad, for the worse, because it probably isn't. They're still winning major competitions, so it can't be that bad. And fair play to them, absolutely. But no, it was a golden period. It was wonderful times. We were forever in the recording studio, and you're right. There was the Planets. We recorded that one, and he brought in 2 massive, great big harps behind me just for the end of Jupiter. It was phenomenal. It was like, wow, this is just great. Yeah, wonderful.
And he did have some connections, did Jim, didn't he?
Oh yeah, he was Mr. Charisma. He really was. Yeah.
He's up there with connection-wise with like Sir Geoffrey Brand, and he really definitely. Great at commissioning new music and.
All sorts.
Like Sandy says, it needs reevaluating that period because I feel he did a great job.
He did. He really, really did. And like I said, the best times were when there was no money there.
Yeah.
I feel quite emotional about that, because it was so special at that time.
Yeah.
Money didn't come into it. Not interested. Didn't matter. It was just so good.
A few years, obviously, you found yourself back at Grimey.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. What did I go straight there? Oh no, I went to Fairies after there.
Oh, sorry, Kev.
Were you there? You were there, Sandy, at Fairies in 99. Yes.
Oh no, I wasn't. Oh yeah, I was.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, you definitely was.
That's a bit of a trek for you, Kev. Over to
Fairies,
Stockport.
over the tops. It wasn't that bad. About an hour.
All right.
It was.
Yeah.
Well, not so bad really, but yeah, I had five pretty good years there, and some more nice big wins as well. But again, good times. It was good times. A cracking band. Yeah.
Is that when Alan Withington had taken over? Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I remember. Again, it was successful, massively, wasn't it?
Very much so. Yeah, Masquerade, I seem to remember, was a cracking performance.
You got another couple of nationals out of that, didn't you?
I did.
Albert Hall.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. With Withington, yeah. And then when that all finished, then back over to Grimey with Dick, because Dick was at Grimey then. So were you, Sandy?
By then I was there as well, and that was a great time for the tours and the concert performances, and
fantastic.
That was one of the times I thought, especially when we did all the tours, but wherever we went, there was a feeling that the whole band were putting a proper show on, and none of it was stage managed to the way it is these days. It was just more natural, wasn't it? And there was so many characters in the band that could just do things on stage that, I mean, cricky, you never knew what the hell was going to happen. But
how did Deck players manage?
They didn't. They were scared stiff. But, it occasionally got over the top, but only very occasionally. Dick sometimes... he'd be looking, go, what the hell's going on? He said, just leave it, it'll be all right. But they had characters like Sean Crowther and
of course
Dean Morley and all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
You just had to be on your mettle all the time. But the playing was great. The concert performances were fantastic.
I was going to say, Sandy, we were talking today how good that band was. It was a really good band.
Yeah, of course, Elgar Howarth was heavily involved in it still then. Well, he used to come up and do weeks at a time, and he kept the standard so high.
Yeah. He did, and that was one of the things that attracted me to go. And Gary rang me and said, would you join the band? And I was thinking, I'm not sure, And he says, Mr. Howarth's coming back to do stuff. So I says, really? He says, yeah, he's going to be doing all these big South Bank concerts again and music festivals and all this sort of stuff. So I thought, right, yeah, I'm in.
Brilliant.
Because he was on a different planet altogether.
I agree.
He really was, unless you've worked with him closely. He's just thinking way above what's the norm is in banding, But he was one with connections,
big time. Yeah.
Big connections.
Yeah.
Proper big composers and stuff like that, So, I mean, so that was attraction there. But then, so you had Gary Howarth, you had Gary Cutt doing a lot of the stuff. Then Dick came and did some, and that worked really well as well with Dick.
It did.
He was a total showman as well.
Yeah, it was a match in heaven, really. It was.
He relished being in front of that band.
Yeah,
and he was able to do his thing, and we were able to do ours, and it was just great fun.
Yeah, and Jill, you mentioned earlier about performances that you're halfway through, you think we've won this.
Yeah,
that was another one in 2005 at the area Rienzi with Dick.
Yeah, I was thinking that today. That's strange, isn't it?
Yeah,
that
was a winner all the way through.
Yeah, it was. But that piece suited the band to a T, because that was a monster blow. That piece, and that band could blow forever.
Cool, yeah.
I mean, there's a recording of Life Divine we did, which is amazing with Gary Howarth.
I love that one.
And when I did a couple of little pieces, we did that Barbarian Horde thing for the...
I remember it,
for Brass in Concert, and that was a huge blow. It was only meant to be done... It's all right when you're doing 23 minutes at Brass in Concert, but then we used to put it on the end of the first half. All the band would be bloody effing and blinding at me, cursing me, because it was such a huge blow, because it was never designed to be at the end of a concert, It was all right at the end of a 23-minute program.
Around that time, guys, some of them brass in concert programs were just special.
Yeah,
they were so entertaining.
Yeah,
and it was just normal repertoire. There were no screen, there were no gimmicks. It was just a band on stage playing incredibly well and enjoying themselves.
Yeah, but it wasn't stage managed either to the extent that it is now. It's absolutely, it's had the sort of heart ripped out of it, I think, in certain ways, and people wandering about the stage and stuff. We were just doing things naturally. I mean, that silly Laurel and Hardy thing that Michael Dodd and Sean Hudson, bless him, did. That was that was a stroke of genius. That came from John Hudson, Sean's brother.
Yeah.
He says, "Don't you think these two look like Laurel and Hardy?" He mentioned to me, and then he says, "What about doing the music for them?" So and that's how that started. But
they were brilliant.
They were great fun, and I think there's a video up on YouTube of them when we went to America. They do the Laurel and Hardy. Sean does Chardass and the Cuckoo and all that, and it's just natural. There's nothing forced. Yeah. There's nothing totally stage managed. It's just guys having a good time.
I know, but you think back to that time, that era with brass in concert, and most of the successful performances was just where music and playing quality was to the fore. Yeah. It was at the front. That was what mattered more than anything else. I don't think it does now.
To me, no. Kevin and Sandy, pieces played well are entertaining to me. I don't need any gimmicks. I just want, like, if you heard Jim Shepard playing Pandora, that is as entertaining as it gets.
Absolutely. Totally.
It's just on another level. I think people are out thinking that entertainment is gimmicks, dressing up, and I mean, that's probably for another podcast sometime.
Yeah.
Later
on.
But
you're right. I mean, all this flash stuff, it just covers up the quality of the playing.
Yeah.
And that's maybe why they do so much of it these days. I don't know.
Yeah.
You remember, Sandy, we did a little piece called The Quiet Place?
Yeah.
Do you remember it?
Yeah, it was
7 or 8 of us just stood at the corner and just played it. No conductor, brought the house in.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that, yeah. Yeah, that was a sort of transcription of an a cappella.
Yes, it was, something like that.
Gospel choral thing. And it just worked. Just reallocated the parts to the appropriate instruments, and then we just stood in the corner. That was the first. That was the very first contest that was at the Sage.
Ah, okay. I think it was. Yeah. In fact, you're right, and we won it, didn't we?
We did. But you remember the night before? We
changed the program.
We did a concert in Spennymoor in the theatre there, and it was a disaster. And we started with this piece that I'd done, a Percy Granger fanfare thing, and it was people were knocking stands over, and Dyke was sort of getting a bit lost, and we came off stage, and they were all saying, "Right, that's it. Tell them not to bother coming tomorrow. We'll do it without him. We'll do it without Dyke, and we'll change the program and all this." It was just a chaos,
it was
typical
amazing.
Grimey. And then we sort of rallied round it, and it all came together the next day.
It did.
And it was just one of those funny things. But it was all about the music then.
Yeah, exactly, and the quality of playing. Correct.
Yeah.
I only ever did a short stint at Grimey, but one thing I noticed about that band while I was there, I've never seen a group of people stick together quite like they did.
Yeah, they did used to. You're right.
Oh, they defended each other to the hilt, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Coming from Black Dyke, where there's Jacko with his black spots and stuff like this,
Yeah.
And then you go to Grimey, and nobody got fingered there. It was just literally they looked after each other.
But you know why, don't you? That stems back to the 70s and 80s and the early 90s. When they worked at the pit, none of the players ever got sacked because they'd have lost their jobs.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So they used to stick together, and that's why the camaraderie was so strong at Grindthorpe. Nobody ever got fired. There were players on the back row corner. Jesus Christ, you wouldn't have them in your house, let alone in your band. They were shocking.
Yeah.
And I'm not being cruel, but they would, if they were still alive, they'd probably say, "Yeah, you're right, Kev," but they wouldn't move them on. No.
I mean, there's legendary stories about the likes of old Jeff Hurst on horn. And Patsy, I think, was conducting, and he's going around the band and saying, "Just try this note for tuning and all this." And they were, play. And he says, "Jeff, play a middle G or play that passage or whatever it was." And so he sort of conducted them in, but instead of Jeff playing on his own, there's about 3 or 4 others playing. And then he says, "No." And the major says,
"Wouldn't have it."
No, on his own. It ties it again. There's still 3 or 4 people playing along with Jeff.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it says, "Jeff, on your own." And his voice from the back says, "He doesn't play on his own." And that was the end of it,
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
And they just defended each other like that,
Yeah.
They were a law unto themselves. Yeah.
So I take it your lifestyle now, Kev. I know you retired early, a little bit early anyway.
Yeah, very early.
I suppose with your lifestyle, that Desford absolutely suits you down to the ground.
It really does. I mean, I did 14 years with Dyke altogether, 14 years with Grimey altogether in different spurts. 5 at Fairies, a year at Brighouse, 3 at Leyland.
Yeah.
And then, in fact, it was you got in touch with me. I left Grimey in 2017, and you said, "Look, we need a sock player for the Open."
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, come on, I only left at Grimey last night, and give me a break." And so
I've always got me ear to the ground, Kev.
I know. So I thought about it, and then I rang you back and I said, "Okay, if it's a one-off, we'll go for it." And that was 7 years ago, and I'm still there. And that's because you're right, what you say. Reason one is it suits my lifestyle perfectly now.
Yeah.
I never miss rehearsals ever. Just never, ever have done, never will. And I can come here for 2 months like I am at the moment in Greece without missing a rehearsal.
Yeah.
Because they shut down.
You've led me into something now. I've always marvelled one thing about you. Well, I marvel about a lot of things, but one thing in particular that I marvel about you is your loyalty and ability to galvanise not just yourself, but the rest of the band. Your character seems to grab them all, that you must be at rehearsal and you must be doing this. I think it's a great quality.
Well, thanks, Simon. That is just purely passion for what it's all about and for what it stands for. It goes back to the Dyke of the 80s where we were all like that.
Yeah.
But sadly, times have changed, and us old dinosaurs are fighting a losing battle on that front. Because it's all changed now. The music colleges, the kids that are coming through, the passion isn't there that used to be there when we were that age. I'm not saying it's wrong. Personally, I am saying it's wrong. For me, it's wrong, and it just winds me up something rotten. And that's why I fall foul with some players these days. Because when they just can't be bothered, or they'd rather do something else. No, if you're in the band, you're there.
You're in there. Yeah.
If you're not coming to the band, then bugger off and stay away. Not interested in you.
I'll never forget Jacko, early on my time with him. I broke down on the A38 coming back from Birmingham for a rehearsal, and I didn't make that rehearsal. So next morning I contacted Derek and I said, "Derek, I'm really sorry about that." He says, "What happened?" I says, "I broke down and, I had to get my car fixed. And, well, why didn't you thumb a lift?" I didn't have an answer for it. That's how they thought.
It was.
Why didn't you thumb a lift?
You're right. That was the mental attitude of that era in those top bands, and miraculously enough, the contest record was pretty good. Really, maybe there's something in that.
Yeah.
Well, one of my first rehearsals, I joined the band, and for those who don't know, at that time, the whole band was the committee. So Fred Ellis would be stood in the middle in the conductor's place.
That's right.
Chairing the meeting, and he'd say, "Right, what about this, that, and the other?" And then we'd all vote on it, and that was it. And there was a few things I remember. No matter how argumentative it got or whatever, if a decision was made about taking a job on or not, once the decision was yes, we're going to do it, everybody got on
Correct.
board and did it to the best of their ability.
Yep.
Another thing I remember very, very early on was at the time I joined, Derek Ruffles was the soprano cornet.
Aye.
And Derek had asked, he left a rehearsal straight after the playing finished and then the meeting, and Derek had gone. And Fred says, well, he's got a bit of a problem with work. He's going to have to miss, I'll never forget this, he's going to have to miss the last 15 minutes of every second Monday rehearsal. They decided that wasn't good enough. They asked him to resign.
Wow.
You know. So maybe there was more to it than that. I don't know, but that was it was all, you were there and that was it. I remember again times when Philip McCann would a good job would come in last minute, which was maybe a month or 5-6 weeks away. Fred would say, "We've got this big job. It means a lot. It's prestigious. It's a bit of a short window for us for something or other. Can we do it?" And Philip would say, "Well, I've got a solo gig that night with some Holden Norton band or something." So I'd prefer we didn't. And then we'd vote to do it. And then McCann, even though he'd moaned, he would still turn up and do the Dyke job. He would cancel the solo job.
Correct.
He would cancel it, or he would reschedule it for another time. I mean, how many players do that these days?
Well, you don't hear it. You don't hear it these days. And you hear of players doing jobs with other bands when they've got a job with their own band on.
Yeah,
and that happened a couple of times at Grimey, and I actually was incensed by it, and made myself unpopular because I moaned like hell about it, but I slept well. Yeah.
So one thing I want to ask you, Kev, is what's your practice regime now? How do you keep in practice? What do you do? Do you leave it for a while and then get it out a few weeks before, or do you just keep going? Or
it's interesting, I mean, I suppose 28 years at Dyke and Grimey, with the amount of concerts we used to do, I never took it out the case from one rehearsal to the next, ever. Never practiced, unless it was a part for a contest and I needed to get my head around the geography of it or something. Never touched it. But now, of course, you're right. I can go 4 or 5 months without a job or anything. And of course, you're right. I'm here in Greece now, and I've got my sop with me, always with me now, wherever I go, and I do pick it up quite regularly now. But before a competition or a concert or something, then I'm at it quite hard at home, because you've got to build it back up again.
Yeah. I remember Brian Taylor at Fairies saying to me once that he called it after the amount of years that Brian has done, and bearing in mind he's coming up to having done 50 years at Fairies.
Wow,
50 years.
That's incredible. Incredible.
And I said, how do you keep going, Brian? He says, I just do topping up practice. He says, topping up, he called it. Yeah. So he knows what he needs to do, and he's got it phone down to exactly what the basic. We all have our own sort of practice regime. We know what we've got to do to get organised and to get the chops back and everything else. Yeah, that's what he called it. Is it similar sort of regime for you?
It is. It's very similar. And you're right. The older you get, the more experience you get, the more you've learnt what you do need to practice and what you don't need to. Especially on a sock, you can't be hammering a sock. You'd be dead in 10 minutes. Yeah. So you're right. But that's another attraction with Desford is, before, like we got the Albert Hall in October, we won't get back together now until 2 weeks before it.
Right.
When we'll spend that weekend, it'll be like 5 hours on the Saturday, 5 hours on the Sunday, same the following weekend, then every night. It's absolutely solid. It's intense. Everybody, there's never an empty chair. Everybody, which really makes me very happy. And everybody turns up there. They can play their parts. They've all practiced it because they show their arse if they didn't, quite frankly. So conductors come in and they're always absolutely amazed. Right. When they come and say, "My God, this band is," they call us a scratch band. That's ridiculous. I mean, no, there's 18 members of Desford that have been there for over 20 years, for Christ's sake. How's that a scratch band? It's the most solid band in banding.
It probably is, yeah.
Oh, without a doubt, without a shadow of doubt.
I must admit, Kev, when I did a bit with Desford, I struggled because, unlike bashing a sop, I need to bash some heavy stuff, and you can't
Yeah.
do it at home. I really struggled with it.
I understand. I do understand. Yeah.
You know, it's everybody's different, aren't they? But I used to think it was only like a couple of days before the contest I could start feeling my chops coming right.
Yeah, well, that's a good time for it to happen, isn't it? Yeah.
Bit nerve-wracking.
Yeah, a lot of the players there are teachers, so they're teaching all the time, so they're always, you know, tinkling away, playing and stuff like that. Yeah, and it works well. Yeah,
they're a great set of people as well, aren't they?
They're just the best. There's no politics there, Simon.
No,
you know, the manager, Pete Smith, he makes all the decisions. You just go along with it. If you don't like it, then you go, then you leave. Yeah. And so there's no pressure, no politics. For me, it's utopia banding, and the standard is superb.
What do you think of the current issues in banding that need fixing or could do with a shake-up, and how would you go about it?
Do you know what? I don't know if much can really be fixed. You know, we've already covered some of the stuff with a lot of the students coming out of the colleges with their different attitudes to what we used to have. Yeah. How can you fix that? You know, and the real problem with that is, you know, they miss an awful lot. And they only turn up when they really want to. And I'm not just saying that. It's true. I've witnessed it for years, you know. And that's very, very difficult. And, of course, with the way the rules are in banded at the moment, I can't knock it because I went and did the Nationals with Corey 2 years ago and then went back to Desford straight away afterwards. You know, so bands like Oldham Lee's doing that, I can't criticise it. I've done the same myself. The only difference is I never charged Corey's a penny in fees, ever. For all the concerts and contests I've done, I don't charge them anything. It's not about money, as far as I'm concerned. But that's up to them, isn't it? If they want to pay and people want to do it. I haven't really got an issue. I don't see how that can really be an issue. I don't understand that one. Difficult. No. I get some of it, like going back to your old band. It does make it seem a little unfair, but I can't criticise because I've done the same myself.
Yeah. What about advice for young players or young conductors? Anything?
Well, young players, you know, I do worry about young players, whether I think back to when I was young, I spent most of my time at home listening to brass band records, you know, because I just wanted to hear all these great players all the time. And I don't think I don't think kids of today do. You think of all the concerts you've done in the last 20 years, you look out in the audience, what do you see? You see the Blue Rinse Brigade. You see the more senior, should I say, people in the audience. You don't see any kids.
Yeah, but
you don't see remember, teenagers.
Don't you remember when we were at Dyke in the 80s? Yeah. We used to look out on audiences from the wings and say, "Look at the age of this audience. They're all 50s, 60s, 70s, older. You know, nobody young's coming. But now we've still got people in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. They weren't coming to the concerts 30 years ago. So what happens? Do you suddenly hit a certain period of your life think, fancy listening to a brass band? I don't know, because those people that are listening now didn't come to concerts.
Well, I can only speak for myself there, you know, Sandy. I since I've stopped playing, I enjoy going to concerts and especially contests. I really enjoy it, the listening experience.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think you think of the natural progression with people, music lovers in general. You look at the teenagers, our era, today's era, it was all pop music, rock and roll, stuff like that. And then as people mature and get older, they start experiencing classical music, the light classics, and they get more and more into that. So maybe there could be some relevance there.
Could be.
But I think the biggest thing is, you know, you've done all the concert hall circuits around the UK, around Europe. I have. You know, you look at all those halls we used to play in regularly, and I'm talking only like 10 years ago. Do they still play in those halls? No. The halls that are booked now are really tiny little theatres because the audience are all dying.
Yeah.
Fact.
Yeah.
Fact. They can't fill them.
Yeah.
Very sad.
That is true.
Yeah.
It's so I'm not sure that can be addressed in banding. I just think the audience will diminish even further.
I think you're right. It is diminishing all the time, and the young people. Thankfully, we've still got the National Youth Band. That's got to be, and then this children's band's got to be a good thing as well.
Yeah.
You know. it's interesting, young players. I've never really had much to do with educational teaching of players. It's not something that I've really had any interest in, probably because I've always been too damn busy sat on a coach with you, Sandy, driving up and down the M1 every weekend.
Yeah, no.
But, an ironic story, about 3 years ago now, a lady rang me up and she said, Kevin, you don't know me, but my daughter, she's looked up to you as a player. You once did a Grimey youth band thing with a masterclass thing. I said, okay. She said she would love to have some lessons with you. Would you take her on as a teacher? I said, no, I won't, because I don't do teaching. I'm not a teacher. That's not what I am. And she was really upset. I said, well, hang on a minute. She said, oh, she's going to be so upset. I said, no. All right. I said, listen, you're going to think I'm incredibly arrogant now. Because when I do something, I do it 100%, as we've already been saying, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
So I said, look, you're going to think I'm arrogant here. And this lady said, okay. So I said, look, fetch her round to my house, tell her to bring her sop, let me have a listen to her, and let me have a chat with her. And I want to see what kind of a standard she's in. And I want to see how keen she is to actually really want to be a good player. I said, and then if I think there's the potential's there and the attitude is right, I said, then I'll take her on and we'll do it properly. And I'm still teaching her now because she's phenomenal and I love her to bits. And that's a young lady called Elizabeth Chung. She's at Johnny Beattie's band, Unite the Union now.
Is she Chris Chung's
yes,
our brother?
sister.
Yeah,
that's
right. Yeah, brother and sister. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Okay. She's doing great. I'm really proud of her. She got in the National Youth Band. She ended up on co-principal. We got her through her grade 8. She got that with honours. And this is all in the last couple of years. And all the time going through with fixed braces on. It's been a nightmare for her. But her courage and her spirit has been exemplary and actually quite motivating for me as well. I've really quite taken with her. Oh, well done her.
One thing you said there was you wanted to suss out her attitude.
Yes.
That's a big thing, isn't it?
It is for me.
How people, the passion, the desire they have for the instrument, how much you see it a lot in young, just generally in youngsters these days, unless it's instant success, an instant progression, like a bloody video game or something. You're up on 3 or 4 levels. Something like playing a brass instrument means hard work over a long period, and a lot of them just don't have the application.
No, they don't. And that's why I said what I said to her mother. I said, if I'm going to take her on, I'm not wasting my time with kids that aren't really that interested. The parent might be, but if the kid's not, forget it.
So the question, Kev, we've been asking in one of our previous podcasts was, what constitutes a championship section standard band?
Well, it's a tough question because you go to the Open or the Nationals and it's always the same 5 or 6 bands that come in the frame every year, with the odd exception. Mm-hmm. And they, for me, are the real championship section bands. And why is that? 1, they've got the best players. 2, they've obviously got plenty of money so they can afford the best conductors. And I'd like to think 3, they put the work in and they've got the right attitude as well. And it's about dedication and passion. If players aren't dedicated, you're not going to win very much. If they are 100% dedicated and there's a huge passion for what they're doing, then like we had in the 80s, Sandy, it was just a given. That's how we were, or we wouldn't have been there.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have lasted 2 minutes. No, you wouldn't.
Exactly. And for me, that's really what it's all about. It's not really about the money, apart from affording a conductor. It's about having the right people with the right mental attitude who want to win and can go through the pain barriers. Because there's always tears, there's always blood, there's tears, there's pain barriers, you've got to fight through them no matter what it is, and it's so easy, which is what happens a lot these days with the younger end, say, oh, I can't do it anymore, I'm going to give up. No, don't give up. Come on, get your gloves on and get out there and battle it.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things that it tickles me a little bit these days, especially with social media, is after big contests, you get all this stuff about... really happy with our performance. Not the result we were after, but it's finished 7th or something. But well done to our friends in such and such a band who for their winning performance and such for. In our day, we were. I mean, we were mortified if we didn't win. I mean, I remember sitting on the coach outside the Albert Hall. We got second, and I was.
Yeah, was that on Odin?
Oh, could have been one. I've got plenty. I've got plenty of them. Bugger.
I know. Yeah.
No. But that sort of attitude where second wasn't good enough.
No. Well, if you remember the meetings, the AGMs with Neil Foster there, from the Foster family.
Yeah.
And he used to say, right, okay, you've won one contest, so it's not been a good year this year.
Yeah.
You give us a bollocking.
Yeah, but the only contest they were in was the European, the Nationals, and the Open.
Yeah.
And if we'd only won one of them.
Exactly.
Not acceptable.
It wasn't acceptable? No, absolutely, yeah.
No.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's what constitutes a real top section band for me, and becoming far and few between, I think.
Can I just say to anybody listening that we're sat here, we can see each other on the screen. Kevin's sat in Greece, mopping his brow with a hanky because it's 30 degrees. We've sat here in the middle of June with about 3 layers of clothing on, So he's doing it again. He's just doing it to wind us up now. Kevin, thanks for that. We go back a long way, and we've had some amazing times in banding together, and it's been great. I wouldn't have changed it.
Me
thank you
neither.
very much for coming on.
Thanks for the invite, guys, and all the very best in all you're doing. It's fantastic.
Thank you, Kevin.